Leader, how do you treat yourself? Leaders, sometimes you're going to find yourself not being in a primary leadership role, and you're going to find yourself under the leadership of someone who may want to quote unquote keep you in your place, to humble you, to remind you of who you're supposed to be according to their standards. Even though we recognize this as a insecurity aspect of how they feel about themselves, it is important about how you treat yourself. So when people come to me and say, hey, I'm being mistreated, the first question I ask is, how are you treating yourself? When I was practicing law, I had a judge who was just unusually ugly toward me. I noticed that in his courtroom, he was not used to having black attorneys. He was not used to having female attorneys like on a regular basis. Honestly, I did everything right. I did everything I could to show respect toward his courtroom. But the mistreatment continued. And one day, after a particularly ugly day, I had said in my heart, one day he was going to stand before me. But in the meantime, I had to continue being who I was. And matter of fact, there were times that were so hard emotionally to deal with how he was treating me. I had to actually get advice from my mentor, and I had to really lean in on my faith and to remember who I was. Not only was I educated, but I was competent, more than competent. I actually excelled at what it was that I was doing. And how I saw myself mattered not only to me, but to those I was serving. So I had to tough it out, and I had to keep the right attitude about myself. So fast forward about 3 years later, this particular judge had lost his seat, and he had to go back into private practice. Now, by this time, I had advanced in my career, and I was serving as a hearing officer for the state of Tennessee. And one of the cases that came before me was a case that he was an attorney on. And when we received notice about the case, and I'm assuming when he saw who was on the case, he asked to settle the case instead. I was not mean about it. I did not mistreat this person, even though I know some people probably say I would have got him back. That's not who I am as a person. But it is a reminder that while some people do things to us to quote unquote try to humble us, to remind us of where our place is, it is important for you to maintain your faith, maintain your standards of excellence, and keep on going. What I had to realize in those tough moments was that I mattered. I mattered not only to me, but I mattered to those I was serving. And sometimes the biggest obstacle that we face is not about how people see us, but about how we see ourselves. Because how we see ourselves determines how we treat ourselves. And also it determines what we will accept. So, leaders, how are you treating yourself? Because it matters. You got to keep going. Remember that you're in your position for a reason, that you have the credentials to be there. And there are going to be people, maybe they are above you or below you. There are going to be people to try to remind you about who you're supposed to be according to whatever standard that they are leaning into. But remember who you are. You matter, and you matter to other people. So treat yourself well. Remind yourself of how hard all the hard work that it took to get to where you are now. And remember why you are serving in that capacity. Because even though you may not always be in the top leadership position, whether you're running a company, running an organization, in a church, or even in your home, you still matter. So treat yourself like you do. I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.